Welcome to my channel. I'm Elizabeth Liz Muschett, and today we're talking about the Mars Station Direct. And my guest, friend, astrologer, colleague is Justin Elzie Crockett. Hi, Justin. Welcome to the
Hey, how
show.
you doing? How you doing, Liz?
Good. You ready to talk about Mars? Because I know Mars, you really like Mars.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, Mars is a really great planet. Yep, let's talk about it.
So to get a hold of Justin, his website is justincrockettLZ.com, and my website is alightpath.com, and we enjoy hearing from you. And we're talking about Mars today. So Mars stations direct on February 23rd, and Mars went retrograde in December of last year on the 6th, and it went retrograde in Leo and backed into Cancer. And Mars stations retrograde about every 2 years. Mars is a personal planet. And would you like to cover the keywords that we have or some of your own?
Well, yeah, I will. And I was just going to say, because it takes Mars 2 years to go around the sun, it basically goes retrograde once a Mars cycle. Let's just put it that
Yes.
way. Yeah, for those that understand that. So the key words are willpower, energy, courage, determination, action, passion. It can be quick and productive, and then of course the caution here is anger, and of course we're talking about two extreme ends of the spectrum. So the more direct aspect can be angry and impulsive and impatient, versus the opposite. It can be weak, careless, lack of energy, procrastination. And because Mars is that planet personally for folks, I mean, it represents how we take action and effort in our life. Represents action and effort and forward movement. Anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think that was good. So Mars ingressed into Cancer on September 4th of 2024. And then Mars ingressed into Leo November 4th of 2024. Then Mars backs into Cancer on January 6th. Mars re-enters Leo on April 18th of this year. And I'm just going to mention the post-shadow phase because we've already went through the pre and most of the retrograde. So the post-shadow retrograde time period is February 23rd to May 2nd. Anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I think you got that covered.
And so we're going to give you a little bit about Cancer. Cancer is a cardinal sign that initiates and creates. The ruling planet is the moon. It's a water sign. It's reflective, emotional, cyclical, and intuitive. And the mantra is I feel. And would you like to tell us the keywords about Cancer, please?
Yeah, the key words that it can be sensitive, caring, warm, family oriented, and sentimental and feeling, because Cancer rules the fourth house in the astrology chart, which represents family and children and family lineage and tribe. The caution, again, of course, we're looking at two extremes of Cancer. It can be too far one way, overly sensitive, or emotional, and then taking everything all too personally. I like how you put that into a sort of a concept there, taking it all too personally. Lack of boundaries, emotional boundaries, controlling or manipulating through emotional rationalization too, um, and passive aggressive. Yeah, that can be Cancer.
Okay, and then we have Mars and Cancer, and I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, so we wanted to give everybody a snapshot of what Cancer energy is like, and then we talked about what Mars represents, action and effort. So what happens when we put Mars in Cancer? And so some key concepts here with Mars in Cancer is that if a person does have Mars in Cancer, they're more likely to take action based on their intuition. But they have to be careful of emotional rationalizing something for action or effort. Also, if a person has Mars in Cancer, they'll tend to assert, because that's what Mars is all about, assertion and forward movement. But they'll assert oneself with sensitivity. and there's an aspect of caregiving there, or needing to nurture something. And of course, again, I say that here, action and effort is geared towards nurturing and family. And emotions, this is most important, emotions are tied to action, effort, and forward movement in life. So that's a little good a snapshot of Mars in Cancer. And I know you gotta, you might want to have something to say about this.
Well, even if you don't have Mars in Cancer, when Mars is traveling through the sign of Cancer, you may feel some of these key concepts that you mentioned here. And I do have Mars in Cancer, so I
Yeah.
resonate with what you said.
Yeah, yeah. And and I like what you said, that even if we don't have Mars in Cancer, we're still being affected as a collective. And it's always kind of important, even though we don't get too much into it in a front here, that if you have, like I am a Cancer, so I mean that Mars is going to affect my son, or if a person has Mars, I mean ours, any other planet in Cancer, that Mars will have some of those same qualities for them, stronger.
Exactly. So then we have the sign of Leo. It's a fixed sign. It gets the work done, stands their ground, brings things to completion, and the ruling planet is the sun. And it's a fire sign, so it's assertive, passionate, energetic, full of vitality and the self. And the mantra is I show. And would you like to share the keywords and the caution, Justin?
Yeah, so the keywords are leadership, heart centered, because Leos tend to be warm and generous. That's an aspect of that. Can't we all just get along and have a good big old party? And they can be very focused. And there's an ego. There's an ego spiritual concept tied to Leo. Caution, of course, because this is either two ends of the extreme of Leo. There can be an egotistical or opinionation type of thing going on here. Also dogmatic or power centered, or just the opposite. They're not self confident, and they're not. There's an issue with self expression or creative self expression that can come out to play here. But Leo is the sign of creativity, so there is a sort of this demonstrative acting and creative aspect with Leo. Just as a side note, a lot of times if a person has Jupiter in Leo, they're actually, I've noticed in my experience, they're actually good at organizing parties and event planning. So
Oh, that's good to know. And here we have Mars and Leo, and I'll let you share this one.
yeah, so we looked at what Mars was like. Again, it's effort and action and forward movement. And so, but when you have Mars in this sign, it takes action is based on one's confidence and generosity. So there is because it is a fire sign, a need for more self-assertion. And they have to be careful of arrogance and opinionation in taking action, meaning like not listening to anybody else and very opinionated in their action and not taking in. That's more of a negative thing, but it's actually very good because it's a person that can be very confident and generous with everyone. Again, leadership here. I might note that Mars in Leo is a signature of American presidents. Both actually, Kamala Harris had her Mars in Leo, and Donald Trump has his Mars in Leo. So it's an aspect of, we go back in history of presidents, hence the leadership you were talking about. They assert themselves with warmth. That's that generous, heart-centered Leo, and because Leo does rule the heart. And then action and effort is geared towards manifesting creativity as dramatic expression, and is tied to action and effort and forward movement in life. So,
Thank you for sharing all that.
yeah.
So, out of bounds, we have Mars out of bounds from January 1st to April 7th of 2025. So, basically 3 months. So, that's a pretty long time. And
Mm.
planets out of bounds act on their own out of the bounds of the sun and can be erratic, or they just act differently. It doesn't have to even be erratic, but sometimes I think of out of bounds as like a little 2-year-old. It's like everything's mine and they don't want to listen.
Yeah. So that kind of tells me a little bit that maybe Liz, and maybe you have some thoughts on this, that when it's out of bounds, Mars is out of bounds, that there can be more conflict right? It's standard. It's going to be up and down conflict, or maybe they could like be more reactive and impatient. And with it in Cancer and Leo during this period, then it's definitely a lot more of maybe taking action at the wrong time. What do you think with Mars out of bounds?
Well, a little bit tension there, because it's just not acting how it normally would, and Mars does not go out of bounds every time it goes retrograde. It's mostly in Cancer, in Leo, and there's another pair of signs, and I don't remember off the top of my head. I want to say Capricorn and maybe Sagittarius, but so it's not always that it goes out of bounds, but it does from time to time. Okay, we're going to have Mars through the lens of the lunar mansions, and Justin's going to share that with us.
Yeah, so because we're going to look at the Sabian symbols today, look at the themes to kind of see, how we're reacting to this, excuse me, this Mars in retrograde, and maybe what some of the themes that we could be focusing on during the Mars retrograde. I took a look at the Mars through the lunar mansions, or the Vedic, what Vedic calls the Nishaktras. And so there's two Nishaktras, or lunar mansions, that Mars is going through this whole retrograde period. The first one is Pusha, which is called the star of nourishment. It's associated with the cow udder. And the themes are achievement, service, nurturing, and it's a good time to plan one's future objectives. And I think we've talked about this before in a couple other shows, that when Mars is going retrograde, it's maybe not the right time to take action, but maybe planning and getting ready for your future and next action and objectives. And those may be around what you want to achieve for the next period, and what you want to be of service, and what needs to be nurtured going along. So I think, again, Mars going retrograde in Cancer, Mars going retrograde in Cancer shows maybe we reevaluate what we're doing action wise, that where we're not being nurtured. So the deity associated with this is actually Brihaspati, which is a sort of Jupiterian guru type. And so this is called the star of nourishment. The other lunar mansion, or nakshatra, that Mars is going through during this retrograde period is Punarvasu, and this is called the star of renewal. Hence, makes sense. Retrograde, good time to renew, to organize, plan, and get that energy back and renew before we move forward with Mars going direct. And the theme here is innovation. Again, good for planning and innovating during this period, nurturing, and wealth and abundance. So again, there's this actually the deity associated with this is Aditi, the mother goddess here. And so, I think that, again, just to summarize, this is a really good period during this Mars retrograde to be thinking about what we need to nourish in our life, plan, and a time to renew. Any thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I like the renewing and the nurturing part of both of these. So that's, another aspect of information to include on this Mars retrograde, or in the Mars going direct too. So I
Right.
like that. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about the Sabian symbols. They were channeled in 1925 by spiritualist medium Elzie Wheeler, and with the assistance of Mark Edmund Jones. And they're basically a planetary picture or a symbolic image with a group of words for each degree of the zodiac, the 360 degrees. So we're going to take a look at the Sabian symbols for where Mars stationed retrograde at 6 degrees Leo. And we're going to start with Leo 7, and I'll let Justin start.
Okay, and so Leo 7 is the constellation of stars shine brightly in the night sky. And the keynote here is the power of basic spiritual values, which refer to man's common humanity and to all enduring archetypes. So we're looking at permanence here.
And then Leo 6, a conservative old-fashioned lady is confronted by a hippie girl. The keynote, the need to transcend our subservience to fashion in morals as well as in clothes. And the key phrase is the reality of social values. And then you want
And
to
the
read.
Leo 5 here is rock formations tower over a deep canyon. Keynote here is the structuring power of elemental forces during the long cycle of planetary evolution. And the key phrase here is impersonality.
And then Leo 4, a formally dressed elderly man stands near trophies he brought back from a hunting expedition. The keynote is the masculine will to conquer his animal nature and to impress his peers with his skill in performing the ancient traditional power rituals. And the key phrase is pride and prove oneself. And we read it backwards because, when Mars went retrograde, it came up to almost 7 and then it backed in. So that kind of sets the stage for the Mars retrograde. So would you like to summarize all that for us?
Yeah, no, I think this is interesting because along with the lunar mansions that we were talking about, and to putting this in context in relation to them, this is kind of where it got to, and where it started thinking. Mars started thinking as it started going backwards or retrograde, and I think a lot of this, to me, relates to what's important in life with social values and letting go of permanence here with impersonality and some change of structure here. I see this because we're talking about rock formations and constellations, about permanence and power. So it seems to be some basic structural changes here, and again questioning values. What's valuable? What do you think?
Well, I agree with all that. And I think you did a good job. So I don't really have to add anything.
Okay.
And here's the chart for when Mars stationed retrograde in Leo on December 6th. And this chart is for Seattle. And so we have Mars circled here so you can just see that. Anything you want to say about this or just go on to the next?
Oh, I think let's go on to the next one because
And so here's the aspects that were going on at that Mars retrograde period. So we have Mars opposite Pluto and its opposite Venus series in the midheaven of this chart. So we don't really have to count the midheaven because it would be different in different locations, basically. But, this powerful opposition of Mars and Pluto, and then, you add the Venus and the series in there. That's pretty interesting. What would you say about that?
Well, I think that it speaks to the dynamic nature of the change of this, right? And where we're talking about changing that first part, as it started to go retrograde, it was looking at the rock formations or stability or permanence in life. And I think our stability and permanence is broken apart when Mars aspects Pluto, right? And I think that it's basically changing the direction, is basically changing our direction and evaluating and saying, okay, the plans you had before, throw those out. We're going to reevaluate now and plan something different here. And the thing to the values aspect, I think, is where Venus comes into play here, because we know Venus rules the second house of values. And I think that kind of leads into with Ceres and Venus there with the values as well, evaluation.
And then we have an air grand trine with the south node going up to Pluto. And in this case, it is the ascendant, so it would be the west coast of the United States to have this air grand trine. And, these planets are communicating, or these points are communicating with each other. And air is about a communication. And then there's two kites off of that, one pointing to the north node and one pointing to Mars. So would you like to say anything else about the grand trine with the kites?
Well, I definitely think it's allowing us to be able to change our perspective as we're planning here because it's air.
And then we have two mystical rectangles, but the one mystical rectangle is tied in with the energy of Mars. It has a trine to that north node, then a sextile to the um, um, with Pluto, and then a trine back to the south node, and then back a sextile back to Mars. So, you know, with that opposition of Mars opposite Pluto, and then there's an opposition with the nodes as usual. So this opportunity and all these aspects, there's supportive and flowing aspects, and then there's challenging and changing aspects. But a mystical rectangle, when they all connect, to me, it's like once you do the work, then there's something to gain or accomplish through that. It can be like a gift or a treasure, so to speak. But, doing that hard work of that Mars opposite Pluto, put in the work to do it. What would you like to add?
No, I think you got that covered. I like your concept of the mystical rectangle.
And then we have another one with the Sun sextile Vesta, trine Jupiter, sextile Chiron, and then trine back to the Sun. So even though that's not an aspect to Mars, it's just interesting that there's two. So there's quite a few planets involved in just the Mars retrograde, just the aspects to Mars. There's quite a bit of
Right.
action there, asking us to do some hard work. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, you covered that really well.
Okay. Now we're going to look at the Sabian symbols for the Mars station direct at 17 Cancer. So would you like to start, Justin?
Yeah. So we look at the one prior, and then where it's at, and then where it's going towards. So, the Cancer 16 degrees, a man studying a mandala in front of him with the help of a very ancient book. What we see here is a deep concern with problems raised by the process of personality integration, and the key phrase is concentration and confirmation, which I might say this actual degree is associated with astrology, because the mandala being the astrological chart here. So it's basically saying, okay, now we're going forward now. We're going to concentrate and confirm what we're going to look for going forward, and maybe astrology is a good thing to reflect on at this point.
And then Cancer 17 is the unfoldment of multi-level potentialities issuing from an original germ. The keynote is life urge to actualize one's birth potential, and the keyword is growth.
And then Cancer 18, a hen scratching the ground to find nourishment for her progeny. A keynote here is the practical concern with everyday nourishment. Remember, we saw that word in the lunar mansion here again. Nourishment necessary to sustain one's outreaching activities. The key phrase here is fulfilling of life's responsibilities.
And then Cancer 19 is a priest performing a marriage ceremony. The keynote is the ritualization of productive interpersonal relationships. And the key phrase is sanction or sanctify. So would you like to sum these ones up?
Well, for me, this just really kind of speaks to the whole Cancerian ideal, which is, as we move forward with this Mars going direct in Cancer, is to what are our responsibilities, that we did that reevaluation of our planning and our goals, and making sure that those, as we go forward, that we are we're picking the right things to nourish in our life responsibly, and that we are growing emotionally. And that's what I would add. What would you add to that?
Well, it's like I kind of mentioned before, letting go of things that we don't need or aren't useful in our life, and to stay on our path and to move forward, because and grow to who when I grow up, this is what I want to be. And it's like it changes even no matter what age you are, because it's like you're going to get older, so it's constantly changing. So just keep going towards that. And we used 4 Sabian symbols today just to kind of like make a picture or a little story for that, because oftentimes we'll use 3 of just the past, present, and future, or the now, where it's been and where it's going. But I put in 4 because it felt the right thing to do.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay, and then Mars stations direct at 17 degrees of Cancer on February 23rd at 6 p.m. in Seattle. So here's the chart with Mars circled here in the 11th house. And then we have a few aspects here. This Mars station direct has a grand trine, and this grand trine is in water, where the one when it went retrograde was in air, and it has a kite to the moon. So Mars is communicating with Vesta, and Vesta trines back to Mercury, which Mercury's all about communication, and then back to Mars, and then the sextiles down to the moon to make the kite. So that's, a nice combination. Vesta is our home and hearth. Mars is how we take action. And Moon's about emotions, and Mercury's about communication. Anything you'd like to add to that, Justin?
Well, yeah, I like that also Mars is, and we'll probably, I know, see this on another slide, but I think it's pointed out now that as we look at this kite, that Mars is actually opposite the moon there. So I think there's a really, probably at this point on February 23rd, we're most intuitive enough at that point and in depth emotionally into really what we have to do going forward. I think that by that point, intuitively what you have to do going forward. And I think this is a really strong emotional, intuitive grand trine with the kite there, that I think that if we've done the work, like you were mentioning before, I think at this point you'll know emotionally where you need to go next.
Right, because for these last 2.5 months, while Mars has been retrograde, it's like most likely you've had a lot of ideas of what you want to move forward with, but this hasn't been the right combination or the right time to move forward. And now, now you can begin to move forward with that in a forward motion.
Right.
Okay, and then we have a T square with Mars opposite the moon, square Chiron. So, would you like to speak to that?
Well, and I think that is. I think the thing with the T square there with Juno and Ceres is highlighting our relationships with others emotionally, and so this could be the time when we initiate some new relationships or change some relationships as this goes direct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and with the Mars opposite the moon, square Chiron, it's like I would say that you've probably made some forward motion, or if you haven't, you know what you need to do to work on accomplishing some healing. It could be emotional healing. So you have a better picture of how to move that forward. And then that Thor's hammer with the Ceres in Juno pointing to that Mars. Um, so how we partner with people and how we nurture ourselves and others is going to be a big, and it's kind of in the news now already. So anything else
Right.
you'd like to say about this?
Well, I think also back to the concept of renewing during this period, that this could be the time when you actually then um, we take action on settling up accounts with relationships. So we actually take action on a specific relationship that we may have. Because that's, as you like to say about squares, it's about action. So Mars is asking us to take action here, going forward and direct. And that, I think with Juno there and the moon and Chiron and Ceres, I think it's about some settling of accounts and moving forward with something.
Well, that's good. So do you have takeaways that people could use for this Mars direct period, or some suggestions of how to best use it?
Time to get going.
I would agree. I would agree. It's like I have lots of notes and been thinking about lots of things, and yes, it's
I think
like,
it's, based on how we've all dealt with the big changes going on in civilization right now, I think those, we've been through this mourning period for a lot of people, and that's Mourning, not Morning. But it's been this time of evaluation, and I think this is an inflection point with Mars going direct. It says, okay, we've had the time to think about this. Now, what are we going to do about it? And what are we going to do going forward? And it's time to stop spinning our wheels and to actually, instead of just observing what's going on and kind of mourning and just, it's time to say, okay, I know what I'm going to do now, and I'm going to move forward.
And I would say that when you know that to move forward now, there's still probably going to be some changes and adjustments to make as you move forward, but it's just like, just do it. Don't wait.
Right.
Okay, so Justin has a quote for us today.
Yeah, so this is by Johann. I don't know why I said Johann. It's Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, and it says, we must always change, renew, rejuvenate ourselves, otherwise we harden.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us today. So I want to thank all those that have been watching live and all those that come back and watch at a later time. And
Yes,
I want to
definitely.
thank Justin for being here with me today to talk about the Mars Station Direct. And Justin and I do consultations in person and on Zoom. We both have newsletters and YouTube channels, so we appreciate you subscribing and liking, making comments. And Justin, you can talk about your slide, please.
Yeah, you can check out my YouTube channel or I'm Astrological Yogi on YouTube or in Blue Sky or on Instagram. So.
Okay, and other shows that Justin and I do are the monthly astrology forecast, the full moon forecast, and Chiron asteroid series from time to time. I've been doing the astrological highlights of 2025, and there's still a few more shows of that, but you can go back and watch the ones that have already been published. New coming to the show is Magical Astrology with Robert Passetti. And the Astrology Star Sisters have Chinese astrology, decans using astrology and tarot, dwarf planets, fixed stars, planet stationing, Uranian astrology, and the Venus star point. So we have many different subjects to offer. Justin and I will be on Talk Cosmos on February 23rd at 1 p.m. talking about the Pisces new moon. And you can watch it live here on my channel or come back at a later date and watch it later. And again, Justin's website is justincrocketelzie.com, and my website is alightpath.com. And again, thank you, Justin, and thank you for watching, everybody that's watching, and we'll see you next time. Have a good day for now. Bye.
Bye.